Good morning and welcome back to Black Bear Forge. Today I have a project for the house. We have a screen door that has spring-loaded hinges and really slams pretty hard, but one of the cats that isn't supposed to be an outdoor cat has figured out how to open it, so I'm going to make a little slide bolt to hold it closed, and if you want to open it, you're going to have to work the slide bolt. This is one of those things I just went out to the scrap pile, found what I could. I've got some 1/8 inch by 2 inch that I'll use for a back plate, so that's roughly 3 millimeters by 50 millimeters. I have some 1/8 by half, so that's about 3 by 13 millimeters that I'll use for the retainers to hold the bolt onto the back plate. Actually, there'll be 2 back plates. I'll explain that when we get to that part of it. And then I found some half by 1, so that's roughly 13 millimeters by 25 millimeters. And this has some sort of an element already on the end of it here. And whatever this is, I think will make a nice handle to grab hold of. I don't remember what I was making when I did this, but I'll clean this up and finish up this knob. That'll get some shape put in it so that it looks nice and is easy to grab. And then this part here will be the slider itself. Now this whole thing can only fit in about a 4-inch space, so we can't make it overly large. So time to light the forge and get to work. So mostly I just want to get this all nicely rounded up. Yeah, it's already looking much better. Someday we'll forge an element like this, but I'm going to have to try and remember what I was making and why it looks like this to be able to do that. So. This would be a good place to go to the double horn anvil. Be easier to keep this straight. I think we're going to be okay. Now I just want to try and refine that little knob so it's not so angular. This may take some filing to get it really cleaned up nicely. Just trying to make this kind of lozenge shaped, or maybe you'd rather call it football shape. Of course, I guess it depends on what part of the world you're in, what you call a football. And like I say, a lot of this will be done with a file. But it's a lot cleaner than it was, so I'm going to cut this off at 4 inches. And that's just because 4 inches suits my project. If you have something different you're doing, make it suit your project. Oh boy, I'm chopping that up really bad. That's what happens when it jumps when it's on the hardy. But I need to butcher this and draw it out round. And that's just where I'll start that. So just put a corresponding cut in there. So try not to let that bounce on the Hardy. Pays to get it back in the starting mark every time. So I'm going to use that bad aim there as the beginning of my butcher. And I'm going to put a 1/2 inch round, or maybe a 3/8 round tenon on this. I think 1/2 inch round is probably overkill. That's just my first start. And I'm going to go ahead and go grind off this other little bad cut there so it doesn't leave a cold shut. Although this is probably going to be way too long. There was some tenoning dies in the Smithing Magician. We'll just turn that into a round tenon. And that's what will go into the door jamb. It could probably be even smaller. It's just a matter of what you want in your finished project. Round it up as best you can, but no trouble going to a file later. And I want to even this up, make sure it's all back to original thickness. This slides much better if it's all smooth and even. So even though I'm putting a little bit of hammer character in it, I don't want it to have a whole lot of texture. Now let's go ahead and shape this end piece here. I'm going to start by offsetting the handle there. I don't think it needs to go a full 90. It's really already starting to look like what I want. But I think I'm going to bring that down and up. I'm going to have to put this in the vise and give this little finial a twist in the long run, but I think we'll go do that and get that all straightened out before I finish that. Just kind of what I have in mind. Sometimes these things take some adjustments, and what you think you wanted turns out to not really be what you like. And so try to be open-minded about it and be willing to make adjustments if you decide you don't like what you're getting. But I think I kind of like that. Might take just a little bit more straightening. And definitely some filing to get the little knob just right. But I think we can go on to the back plates and the staples. or perhaps the right word is keeper. I'm just going to take this narrow material, forge a bevel down one side, and everything else will be done cold at the bench. And pretty much that's all I'm going to do for the back plates. Just get them ready to work with. These may get just a little bit of filing on them, but for precision, most of the holes will be drilled. We have the major components for our slide bolt forged out. We have the bolt itself. I've done just a little bit of grinding on here. It's going to need some more to clean that up and make it look just right. We have two back plates, one for the inside of the door and one for the outside, and I'll explain all that as we get to it. And we have a piece that we can cut two keepers or staples out of that will wrap all the way around this and go through some slots in one of the back plates to hold the bolt to the back plate. And I was also able to locate in my spare parts pile this knob, and that'll be the inside knob. And I think that's what this was supposed to be, but this was a little bit small. But since one's inside and one's outside and they function differently in this case, I think this one's going to be just fine. This one will be pushed sideways. It will actually go through and connect to the back side of this. So these will both need slots in the back plates. So if you're confused, stick around and we'll make sense of all this. So the first thing I want to do is make our keepers. And that needs to be a little bit longer. I need a little tab that's going to stick through the back plate. And that doesn't matter what length I leave that right now, as long as I leave enough material. So then I'm going to mark there, come around here, and mark this. You say, as long as I've got enough, I'm going to plug weld that from the back. You can peen it over and rivet it, and you might need a little bit more material for that, but for plug welding, I don't need much. Then I'm going to cut that off there. I need two of those that length. I'm going to start this with that first mark up in the vise. And bend it over cold. Put the little bevel you put on there on the outside though. Make sure it's facing the right direction. And then get this as much 90 degrees as you can. Bend both of these in the same place. That kind of over bends them, so I come over to the edge of the vise here and try and clean that up to 90 degrees. Now to bend this other side, I want a piece as wide as my bolt is, because this tab hangs past the bolt. I can't lock that in the vise jaw, that'll be in the way. So I just have another piece of material, just a piece of whatever. If you do a lot of this kind of stuff, you might want to just have a little box with an assortment of materials like this. Francis Whitaker used to case harden his materials for doing this kind of stuff. But that's all you need to do to make the keeper. But I don't make enough of these that I need a bunch of case hardened blocks around. So those then will be our keepers that hold our bolt down to the back plate, and the bolt will be able to slide in those. So next we'll turn our attention to one of the back plates. So I'm going to put my bolt on here, centered. I'm going to draw a line. Now because of the width of the pencil right there, this is standing off the edge of the bolt, but that should be just about right for my center line on my little staples here. So now I have to decide where are the staples going to go. Now I know here this has to be able to slide all the way back, so there's no reason for this staple to be any closer to the end than that is. So I'm going to mark for the center of that staple, and when it's all the way in, this could be clear back here, but I don't think I want it clear back there, so I'm going to bring it in here. I only need a little bit of travel space. So if that's there, and this comes clear back to here, I got to kind of think about this. I'll probably put a little rivet in there so this can't slide too far, although my inside handle may serve that purpose, but you don't want to be able to pull this all the way out. So that would work just fine. If there was a rivet right at that point, these will work. So, if nothing else, that's where we'll probably mount this on the back side. I'm going to start this by drilling 2 holes for my tab to go through here. If you're doing the same one over and over again, make yourself a little template. And that way you'll know just exactly how big to make it, where to drill all the holes. Yep, that looks pretty good. This is 1/8 inch thick material. I'm going to drill 2 1/8 inch holes at each leg, and then we'll punch out the web in the middle. I'm going to set my vise as narrow as my punch is, and it's just a little 1/2 by 1/8 inch punch. We're going to see if we can punch through and knock this web out. Sometimes this works really well, and sometimes it's kind of ragged. So you can see it leaves a little burr on the back. We'll have to clean that up, but to start with, that's not bad. That can be filed off. That one came out cleaner. So 2 of them came out pretty good, and 2 of them have a little burr that has to be knocked off of there. Pretty easy to do though. So there are slots. These probably don't quite fit. When I get to the final assembly, there'll be some filing, but they do fit width-wise. It's just the ends aren't quite exactly the right size, so there'll be a little filing on these to do, and that's just fine. After loading all the video for this project in the computer and starting to edit, I realized this is going to be a much longer video than I would like to put out as a single video. So this is really going to end up in 3 parts. We're going to call it good today for part 1. We'll pick up with part 2 and finish the assembly of the slide bolt. It'll be all ready to install at the end of part 2. In part 3, we'll actually look at the installation on the screen door. And hopefully that'll keep those cats in. So I hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, but be safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next one.